Hey guys, this will be video 15 for the vintage Les Paul custom restoration. I'll be talking primarily about the neck today and the neck construction, and I'm going to freehand the camera here for just a moment, and then I'm going to put it in the little stand. But basically, I'm going to move over here and I'm going to show you. Well, let me show you this quickly. See this? That's kind of like an outline for a neck. Now just imagine that being about 3/4 of an inch thick. Hopefully closer to an inch thick is what you really want to be your target. And then you've got it, pretty much roughed out within about a 1/16 of an inch or less, approximately a millimeter. Now this is it may look kind of interesting and kind of crazy. That's a DeWalt miter saw. That's a 10-inch miter saw. And I'm just going to show you how you can use a miter saw as a clamping station to build your neck. Now that neck is already finished, it's dry, and I've got it routed. You'll see it here in a second, but I just did a mock-up clamping to kind of give you an idea of how you can use your miter saw as an excellent clamping station. And I'll just kind of zoom in here a little bit. See, that's the heel of the neck. And I'm sorry, well, that's actually the tendon area. That would be the heel right there. And then you can see how you can just use different points on the... Now, I wouldn't dare use a quick grip on compression clamping like that. They're not strong enough. I just put that in there to kind of show that that's a clamping point. I would use either a C-clamp or some sort of just a higher compression crank clamp of some sort. You can see how sometimes I'll use the quick grip to kind of keep a block under control while I crank in with the cabinet clamp. So what I'm going to do, I can probably do this freehand. Yeah, let me show this as well. You can also use like your spring clamps to kind of keep surfaces flat. I didn't have to do it on this one, but there's things like that you can do. And I'm also I hope I don't forget to explain, I wouldn't, if this is a 3-piece neck or a 5-piece neck, you don't dare try to clamp and glue all this up at once. It'll be a disaster. It's just not going to work. So I'll break it down and show you how I do either the treble side or the bass side if it's a 3-piece, and then glued to the centerpiece, and then I let those dry, and then I shape them just to kind of make sure they're staying stable and where I want them. Then I come back the next day and I glue those two to the other side. So let me I should be able to just break these down while I'm holding the phone. Yeah, I don't think I need to talk about anything else. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me do this. Let me just set the phone down. It won't take but just a second. And that'll keep it from going crazy. Let me make sure the phone is pretty much in a stable position. Sorry about the movement. But the rest of the video, I'm going to spend probably about 25 minutes just standing here at the table talking about neck construction. I'll pick up the camera one more time and show this just briefly while it's open. Basically, when you're doing this, you would start out, you got your miter stand, your miter saw, and if you're fortunate enough that you've got the DeWalt, this will slide, and then you slide that down to that end. Bear with me. Okay, sorry about that. And then you'll see that that's perfect for the headstock. And then I wouldn't recommend trying to put wax paper on the back. You only want the wax paper just on the bottom, just enough to catch any little bit of glue. And then you're building it up like that. And you don't want this hanging over. You want to make sure that that's really stable. And then you see how that's perfect? I could actually slide that out a little bit more if I needed to. But you can find all sorts of clamping points in here to make it work. And anyway, so let me put the camera back in the stand and then we'll start talking about neck construction. That should be good. Okay. And every now and then I'm going to have to lean over to the camera just to kind of make sure where I'm staying, that I'm in position. And anyway, I'm just going to try to keep it in this area right here as I'm talking about a certain thing. So this would be your finished rough neck. Now it's pretty close to about as precise as you can get. This thing is perfectly S4S, meaning square on all four sides. I could put a square on here, and regardless of where I put the square, it's perfectly square. There's no catty womped corners or anything like that. If there was a problem corner, just make note of it and work around it. And always make sure that you work off like a square side. But let me look at the camera again. And then, yeah, I'll slide it. And then you can basically see how you've got the centerpiece. So what I would have done in this case, when I roughed out the neck, which is, I hope I can get this in the camera, probably going to be pretty difficult. I didn't realize how much space it takes. Basically, the neck would be in a single board like that. That way, when you roughed it out, let me move that forward. When you roughed it out, then this piece comes out and then flips around and gets glued to the other piece like that. And what happens when you do that, I may have to wet this. I don't know if this is going to show. I hope it shows right here. It's really beautiful. What that does is when you, I hope you can see, I don't think you can see that, but if you can see it, you can see how the grain of the board is kind of going in on an angle. It's close to quarter. Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely quarter some. It's a little bit rift right here. But basically, when you look at this neck from the end, if this were a stain grade neck, you would see that they're like a mirror reflection of one another. Now they're not book matched because you didn't flip the board like that and open it up and it being book matched. You literally turned the board 180 degrees, and when you turn them 180 degrees, it's the next best thing to book matching. Because now your grains, if your board was to try to, if it were to try to warp in a certain direction, it's going to offset the other one, because the other one would be, when I say warpage, I shouldn't be using that word, because next you should have them roughed out so that there's a guarantee there's not going to be any warpage. But if they were going to pull in a certain direction, they would be pulling opposing one another. It'd be more stable. This neck, when I roughed it out, they didn't move. It was beautiful. And the cool thing about that is when you've got this one large board, which is basically 1 inch by 3 inch by about 30 inches long, give or take, when I roughed it all out, I let these pieces set that small, just little bitty. I mean, we're talking, less than 3/4 of an inch right here, less than almost a ½ inch out here on the end, and it's amazing to come back 2 days later and pick them up and they're still perfectly straight. When a board does that, you got a very excellent neck. All right, let's see, what else should I talk about? Construction. I think I explained what I meant by the glue up. If this was one of the leaves, then whatever your center line is going to be, if you were going to have a center line of a piece that say is 3/8 of an inch, then you would glue this side up first, let it dry overnight, and then come back the next day and shape it, and then come back the day after you got it, or after you got it shaped, then glue it to the other leaf back in the jig. So put that to the side. All right, briefly, I'm just going to cover this because I probably, as usual, got long. Oh, it's not too bad. 10 minutes, 16 seconds. Let's see what I want to talk about next. Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about the. Now, I tell you what, let me stay on the layout. This is pretty important because when you're sitting here looking at this physical little stick, there's a lot of engineering that has to be considered before you end up with this little stick. And I'm not going to go into the details about should it be quarter sawn, should it be plain sawn, versus maple versus mahogany. That's not what this video is about. That's a completely different topic. But what I do want to talk about briefly is the importance of being able to, and I hope this, let me do this. I'm going to slide the camera back and it may vibrate a little bit, but we really need, I need to make sure that we got a good view of everything, because this is going to, these are some pretty large pieces, and I'm going to, unfortunately, I'm going to have to keep looking back at the camera and seeing where I am. All right, so basically when I start out, when I'm engineering a neck, let's say I'm building a hollow body jazz guitar that's going to connect, the neck is going to connect the body at the 14th fret. Changes everything. Or I'm going to build a Les Paul that's going to type a guitar that's going to connect the body at the 16th fret. Changes everything. Because we're always working, I'm going to lean back and look at the camera, we're always working from this point where the 16th fret or the 14th fret will be. That's where all of our engineering is derived from. Our nut will be a different distance. And I'm going to hold these 2 points down here. They're probably going to go off the camera. But you'll see the one on the bottom is for like a vintage Gretsch. And the one on the top would be for like a Silver Jet or either a Les Paul. And actually the one on the top is a 25-inch scale. So if you see where my thumb is on the bottom, that's the nut location for, say, a Gretsch 6120. Or something of that nature, or a typical acoustic guitar. Any acoustic's going to hit at about the 14th fret. And you saw how much I slid up. It's literally probably an inch, close to 1.5 inches longer neck in order to build a Les Paul. And that doesn't really pertain to the project at hand, but it pertains to layout. And the reason I'm holding paper, it's a lot cheaper to screw up on paper than it is on your prized maple or whatever wood you're going to be using to do the neck. You always work with your like sacrificial type scrap woods for stuff like that. If you don't have it, glue some boards together. They don't have to be pretty. They need to be straight, and they've got to stay straight. But again, poplar or this is antique pine. This is pine from like the 1800s. This is out of an old building that my grandfather and father demoed back in the probably the 50s. So this is incredibly old pine, very stable. Stuff like that's really good. So you start out with paper, draw everything, or either if you're lucky, if you got templates from how do you call it, like the acrylic templates, then so be it. But you lay out your scale based on either what it is you're building, whether it's custom or whether it's you know, like a Fender Stratocaster. Well, that's a 25.5-inch scale. A Gibson Les Paul. They vary. The scales vary from 24.564, 563 up to 24 3/4. Paul Reed Smith is a Dobro scale. That's a 25-inch scale, which is actually my favorite scale as well. It's kind of a split in the middle. So know what it is that you're wanting to build, but stick to that and keep it historically accurate. In other words, don't build a Les Paul with a 25.5-inch scale. you're probably going to have a lot of trouble getting rid of that, and it's not going to feel like a Les Paul as well. So anyway, I won't digress into that. So I talked about layout a little bit, and also when I speak of the neck, and I'm sorry if there wasn't anything on the camera, I was just kind of rambling a little bit, but this would be the front drawing of like your traditional Les Paul, if you're really keeping it intact. And what this boils down to is, yes, this might be a traditional Les Paul neck, but back here at the bottom, let me see if this is in the camera. I'm just gonna have to get behind the camera. Obviously you see the bridge right there at my left thumb. You can see the bridge pickup location, and then if you notice, there's like a reflective surface here. Those are two different pickup locations, and I was doing some analysis between a 24 fret neck versus a 22 fret, and just how much it affects the location of the neck pickup. And you're thinking, well, how does that affect the whole neck and the head? You'd be surprised. All this has to be engineered on the front end, because on my custom 59 replica Les Paul that I'm building, that's a 24 fret, I took it off the body about 1/4 of an inch, and it really connects the body between closer to the 17th fret rather than a 16th. I kind of got long arms anyway, so it's cool. And from a visual standpoint, it allowed the neck pickup to stay very, very close to its historical location, but I got a 24 fret neck, and just by engineering it a little bit. And it did not affect the bridge location. Now, what does that have to do with the neck that we're building here? Not a lot. I'm kind of just, I guess I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, and I'm thinking of things that you guys may not realize that, oh man, I got a lot of homework to do. So yeah, you do. Especially if you're going to venture off into some sort of custom world. You need to really know what you're doing before you do something custom. I'd highly recommend just building a traditional Telecaster bolt-on neck, kind of learn about how, where the neck is supposed to be in relation to the bridge location, and then graduate up to a Stratocaster, and then maybe experiment. Let's see if that's in the camera. Rather than the neck being straight on the body, maybe experiment with tilting the neck 1 degree. It makes them feel incredible. All the Strats that I build, I pitch the neck on about a 1 degree angle, and then I'll run like a Floyd Rose, and then, oh man, they play so good. It doesn't feel like two boards screwed together. So anyway, again, start with a plan. Stick to your plan as best you can, but if you get to the point where you realize you want to change, or you're comfortable making the change, well then so be it. Knock it out of the park. All right, I'm gonna grab this neck again. I'm gonna talk about the truss rod work. And I got a lot of crap on the table, but I think I'll be able to pull this off. This is what I was talking about, where the owner and I, we've already discussed the whole truss rod. Well, I drew on the side, and I already showed, I think in the last video where I showed, oh yeah, with this truss rod, bear with me, let me just put this on here. If this truss rod is brought up flush with the top of the neck, look how much, and let me make sure I'm not exaggerating. Let me make sure I'm perfectly flush as best I can be. It's hard holding this stuff. That is no exaggeration. Look how much wood is left in the neck. There's like a full 1/4 of an inch at the thinnest part of the neck. Now this neck, I've got this baby machined to absolutely critical. I cannot make one mistake. If I make one mistake, I lose this neck, because I'm the exact target on my 12th fret position, and I'm at my exact target on my, well, I'm actually about a 32nd of an inch over on my 1st fret location. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm not exaggerating when I explain to you that's how much material is going to be left in that neck. That's amazing. Now, and on that note, this has a round bottom and obviously a flat top. And you're thinking, oh, you know, a lot of people, most guys watching this video are not going to know this, but a lot of guys will just put this on a table saw and they'll just take the table saw and they'll just plow that baby out, you know, from one end all the way out the other side. But I don't do it that way. I did it on a router table. And you can see, it's very professional first off. I'm just going to show it. Very clean, very nice. And it's just, when I say perfect, it's positively perfect. And then I'm going to try to get a little bit closer to the camera. Look how much wood is left in that. That's amazing. Look how much wood got left. That's so cool. And that's so much more strength right there. And this was, I had to do this with 3 different bits and probably 7 or 8 different passes. Sorry about that, it wasn't in the camera. You probably won't be able to see it, but it's 3/8 of an inch deep with a 1/4 inch radius bottom up to this point. Then it drops down about a 1/16 of an inch and it travels about a 1/2 inch at about almost 7/16 inch deep. And then it steps down again and changes over to a 3/8. Well, I'm sorry, it was 3/8 inch. It changed from a 1/4 inch bit back here to a 3/8 inch right here, and then it remained 3/8 all the way out the end, but it dropped again right here down to I didn't measure it. It's probably closer to getting closer to a 1/2 inch. Why? Because let me just get this in there. Because this is 3/8 of an inch thick all the way up to this point, then it has to get a little bit thicker right here for the end of the truss rod. So I'm probably spending too much time with that, but then again, probably not enough. Now this is, because truss rods are they're really complex. Now this little thing right here, I'm just going to try to go real slow. I think you can see that. It's just a little fillet, and what that little fillet will do, find the camera, okay, I'm going to do this roughly first. If you glue your fretboard on, and then you glue your top on, you notice how, whoa, wait a minute, there's a lot of empty space right there under those 2 components. Well, what this little fillet does is it goes in here. Let me just put it in. I hope it's in the camera. Let me just make sure it's up in the camera. And I've actually got a little mark right there. I have a mark that designates the very back of that point right there, so that this will basically get epoxied in. Let's see if it will show. Yeah, that'll get epoxied in, and then it'll get it'll get cut off with a Japanese flush cut saw, and then it'll even get cut flush on this angle as well. Then once this cover goes on here, it'll be all wood, and the screw that goes through for the truss rod cover will actually have some wood to go into as well. And I don't think there's any point in talking about that anymore. That's pretty self-explanatory. But it just keeps there from being a void in there. And let me just put this where it needs to be, and then I'm going to put a clamp on it. So I don't want to show the logo, and I'll leave it at that. And then this is not the fretboard. This is just for sampling purposes. I'll probably need to get another. Oh man. I misplaced my other clamp, my other spring clamp. So I'll just use this. It should hold. So basically, that's going to be the world we're going to be getting into pretty soon. Very close. And you can see this is all very rough, but you can see. I say you can. Maybe you can. I hope you can. Maybe that bone nut will stay there. See how much wood is left? There's just an enormous amount of wood remaining. And once the truss rod cover goes over it, you'll never know. This is what I mentioned in one of the last videos where the owner and I are both on the same page about this, and he agreed that we'd rather stay modern and it be strong than go with 1930s, 40s engineering. So, alright, so I talked about the truss rod, the fitment, the passes. I'll show the bits if I can find them. Yeah, here they are. I'll just have to get back in the camera. The first pass was made with a small 1/4 inch, and I took it up to about a 1/4 inch deep, and then after that pass, then I came in with the little round nose, the 1/4 inch round nose, did one pass and did the bottom. So it got the little U-shaped bottom.